Let's talk about Death Stranding and what could have been done to make the game better. This is a game that I personally love. I love the gameplay, I love the story, I love almost everything about it, but I understand why a bunch of other people dislike it. Now, I feel for most of the people who dislike it, there was almost nothing that could have been done for them to actually like this game and keep the vision of the game intact for the people who do like what this game is. Since this is a very slow-paced game and the core gameplay loop is you trying to traverse terrain in a very realistic way, that's not something that's inherently appealing to a lot of people, especially for people who prefer more high-paced action games. But I do feel like there's a couple people who got turned off by this game because of the early levels that otherwise would have ended up enjoying it, because I think the biggest problem in Death Stranding that could have been fixed and made the game a lot better, even for the people who liked it, is the first area of the game. I'm talking about the eastern region in particular. Once you get past Port Knot City, the game becomes excellent, and I wouldn't change anything about it except for maybe some minor things if I really think deeply enough about it, but generally I wouldn't really change much of the game past Port Knot City. And the Eastern Region map is not a bad map at all, it's just a bad first map. Getting to the incinerator is fine, the whole area around Capital Knot City is fine, but I feel like the game really takes a downturn, specifically with the path to the wind farm, Port Knot City, and some areas in between the way station west of Capital Knot City and the distribution center. Unless you happen to have a lot of player-made structures just there on the chiral network when you first experience this area, it is just way too hard and isn't a gradual enough push in difficulty to get people used to the game. Honestly, I think the game past Port Knot City is a lot easier than the beginning parts of the game where you have to go to the wind farm and Port Knot City for the first time, just because those two areas where you're in a very confined space and there's lots of like trees and rocks and BTs everywhere is an area that I feel makes a lot more sense for the middle or the end part of the game rather than the very beginning. I feel like the pure difficulty of these areas really turned people off from continuing playing the game. I know when I was playing the game, I actually didn't really want to continue the main story missions because it was so aggravating to get through the wind farm area and the Port Knot City area. I died once trying to get to Port Knot City, and then I just ended up doing side deliveries for a couple hours, delaying the inevitable of actually getting to Port Knot City just because it was so annoying, and I would rather traverse an area that I could handle a bit more so I could kind of get used to the game, how it controlled, what I needed to do to get past these BTs. And if I didn't do that and kind of just forced myself through the game, I don't really think I would have had as fun of a time as I did playing the game through the first time, because I would have just died over and over, kind of wondering what I did wrong instead of letting myself get used to the controls and the mechanics in a less stress-inducing environment. So if I personally were to fix Death Stranding, there's a couple things I would do. The first of which would be to flatten the area between Port Knot City and the distribution center, and the area between the wind farm and the distribution center, just so there's less elevation and there'll still be trees, there'll still be BTs, but you feel like less confined, and you won't really have to deal with the steady inclines, therefore you could focus more on the BTs and the other obstacles in your way. I would also probably change the river that goes straight across the region to be a bit more narrow, therefore you could reliably get across it by just placing one ladder. When going from the way station over to the distribution center for the first time, I tried to avoid the river just because there was a lot of mules in the way, and I just didn't want to lose my packages trying to get across while dealing with them simultaneously. But unfortunately, there was really no way of avoiding that river, and by continuing to move forward, I ended up having to deal with BTs and mules along the way, and it just ended up making me pretty frustrated with the game early on. This challenge wouldn't have been as bad if it was later in the game, but just having that huge spike in difficulty so early on is really jarring, and I think it turns a lot of people off from this game, where otherwise they would have a lot of fun with it. And by narrowing the river, it doesn't take away the challenge of the BTs or the mules being there, but it does give the player more options on how they want to approach the area. I mean, in the actual game, you have to cross a river regardless, but having that be a bit easier while dealing with BTs and mules would help a lot. If they wanted to add a river later into the region to teach the player how to cross difficult rivers, they can 100% do that. I think it would have been great if the current river was narrow, as I just said, but then it kind of branches off into a wider river that blocks off the pathway to both Port Knot City and the wind farm. That, in addition to flattening the areas, I think would make the game a lot more bearable and fun to play. But I'd like to hear what you guys think in the comment section below. For those of you who like Death Stranding just the way it is, do you think this is a fair change that wouldn't compromise the integrity of the product? Or do you think it would completely ruin the entire design they were going for? And for those of you who played the game but ended up giving up early on, would these changes make it so you would not give up? Or do you just dislike the game regardless? Let me know below. Anyways, thank you guys for watching, and I will see you in another video.